This episode of Still Untitled is brought to you by Movement Watches, started by two broke college kids that wanted to wear stylish watches but couldn't afford them. Movement, MVMT watches was founded on the belief that style shouldn't break the bank. Movement watches have a classic design, quality construction, and styled minimalism that start at just $95. At a department store, you're looking at $400 to $500. Get 15% off today with free shipping and free returns by going to mvmtwatches.com/untitled. Again, that's mvmtwatches.com/untitled. And now on with the show.
Welcome to Still Untitled, the Adam Savage Project. I'm Will.
I'm Adam.
And I'm Norm.
Hey, it seems like we just left here just minutes ago.
We had a bit of a false start there. You guys don't know about it, but our equipment was fuzzy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think it was a static electricity in your frame or something like that.
I got nothing. Like, I got crazy static going on right now. I don't know what's happening over here.
But I'm back.
Hey, welcome back to San Francisco.
Thank you. It's so nice to be back. I rode my one wheel over to Ritual Coffee this morning,
Wow.
just like old times.
And we've
couldn't
reached
do
peak
that
San
on tour.
Francisco.
We
Yes.
reached peak San Francisco. I've been gone for almost 2 months.
That is a long, long time.
I've never traveled away from home for that extended period of time without a break. I won't do that again. I'll probably tour in smaller increments, but it was great to have done, and it was an amazing tour. And I know we've talked about it on the previous Codcast, but
Codpass, yeah.
Michael Stevens and our director, Michael Weber, the three of us we built something that we're really proud of and we really loved doing. Brain Candy was an unqualified success. We just really had the best time.
And it's not really built at the start of the show. It's built at the end of the tour.
I'm not even sure that's correct, Norma. It's more like the entire time it tours, it just keeps on modifying and refining, and we change things up here and there as we feel like maybe we're leaving something on the table here. Let's goose this. The fall tour, I think, will feel quite different than the spring tour, even though the content's going to be very similar. I think we all have some ideas about ways to plus it, as they say at Disney World.
Is that what they say at Disney World?
That's a Disney concept, is to take something that's really good and make it just one notch better. It's called plussing.
So I had a boss who told me when I wrote something that everything I wrote should be the best thing I've ever written, which I said was like, that's a horrible, monstrous thing to say to somebody, but like, you should always be getting better.
Yeah.
If you're on a daily deadline, it's maybe a little harder. But if you're
Absolutely.
doing monthly, you should be able to make everything better than the one that came before.
Or it's
Totally
never
agree.
finished.
Yeah.
Just on deadlines. What was the first thing you did when you got back to San Francisco?
I flew a 6 a.m. flight from Reno back to San Francisco. So I was home by 7:45 in the morning.
Okay.
And I flew United, and luckily I was not dragged like a rag doll, bloody-faced, out of the plane.
Yes.
Well,
or
I mean-
denied because of your leggings.
Well, I mean, also because, I'm white.
You were probably in the front of the plane too. They're okay with like those. They have to get through another 100 people before they get to you.
Exactly. Anyway, I arrived at 7:30 in
Wow.
the morning and immediately crawled into bed and slept until noon
With the dogs?
With the dogs.
The dogs had to
Oh.
be
Dogs
thrilled.
were beside themselves. Huxley was like making all those like dog noises of
Yeah.
extreme satisfaction.
When I go away for like 3 days, I come back and Chloe. There's nobody that is more excited to see. I mean, my daughter's excited to see me, but Chloe Bananas is thrilled every single time I hit.
Maggie
the door.
has trouble breathing. She's like,
As a relatively new dog owner, my fear is that it would be a length of time to go on a trip and come back and the dog will forget who you are.
Ooh, the new dog.
that
that's
does not
possible.
happen.
Okay.
That really doesn't happen. I mean, the dog's like, look, I think to a dog, whether I've been gone an hour or 3 weeks, it's the same to them. I don't
Yeah.
think they have the same sense of time that we do.
Like it's funny what the dogs remember. I had Chloe in the car the other day, and we ended up driving by one of our old apartments, the one that we had when she was a puppy, and she immediately recognized, like her ears perked up. She recognized some sort of smell, like
Right.
eucalyptus trees or something, and she was like, I know this place. This is a place that I know.
Yeah.
So you'll be shocked at what they remember and what they don't. Like they're much more astute, but the sense of time they definitely
Well,
don't have.
I think there's plenty of memory because I notice it on the dogs too when I take them through sections of town near dog parks I frequent. Mm-hmm. They're like, what's going on?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that their sense of temporal distance is very different than ours.
And the going to dog parks is funny because when we go to a dog park that Chloe hasn't been to in like 9 years, she still does exactly the same stuff that she did when we took her there when she was a puppy, right? She goes in, she goes under the same bench, she sniffs around, she goes over and gets a drink of water, and then she goes and does a lap and checks out
And just in the same way that there are dream diaries, which by the way I don't ascribe to as like perfect purveyors of information, but dream diaries or dream deciphering books where they'll be like, oh, you dreamt about water, that means you have debt, or
Well, you know what they say about dreams.
What's that?
There's nothing more boring than hearing about someone else's
Oh,
dream.
totally terrible. No, I know. But in the same way, I wonder if there are dog personality books like, oh, your dog poops under a bench. Well, clearly that means he's an introvert or something like that.
Well, I think there is some science or some research that says that dogs dream about you.
Oh,
about their owners.
How would they know? Oh, I guess maybe
the
they
dogs
do
tell you.
fMRI and look at their.
No, you just interview the dog afterwards, Adam. It's simple.
Well, I dreamed that I was in a field of treats.
I love the running dreams. Those are my
With it,
and the paws are just twitching.
Actually, so you can go down a fairly lovely YouTube hole of doing dogs running in their dreams and see dogs lying on their side doing full gallops.
Oh, that's so good.
Oh no, it's amazing.
I thought you were going to say ASMR dog videos.
But I think it's ripe for taking it's ripe for taking that gallop and blue screening it and matting them into a landscape.
Why you need
like
those
Mars.
green sheets?
Right.
Green sheets.
this-
Yes. Key that dog out.
This is the dog equivalent of like the sleeping baby costumes that you assemble the flats behind the baby while they're unconscious, and you have like, these whole vignettes.
Somewhere in the world, we have photos of Thing 1 and Thing 2 when they were 1 year old, with like lying in.
Hold on, think about this one and
on
decide if
some
you want to go down this path.
No, lying on some bare rug with a cigarette between their fingers, like asleep, totally asleep, with like a cigarette between their fingers and like a beer bottle next to them. Yeah,
They're very posable. Those babies.
Norm took a picture at a friend of ours' wedding of my daughter when she was little, literally reaching out and grabbing we were at a friend's wedding. She was all dressed up in like fancy baby wedding clothes, and she was reaching out to grab somebody else's beer bottle and was pulling it toward her mouth.
Yes.
And she was like, "Bottles? I know how bottles work." Fuck yeah. Anyway,
All right. So you took a long nap. You woke up with the
took one nap.
dogs.
Yep.
And I know you weren't disconnected off the grid because you were you had internet.
Yeah.
But there were rituals, home rituals, and shop rituals. Are you back engaged?
I'm still in the middle of it. I had a lot of packages to open because that's just the kind of person I am.
Yes.
We know that. I also had a lot of sorting to do. This shop I was doing a ton of production for Brain Candy before I left, so it was a real crap hole. Mm-hmm. So I did a couple of hours of cleaning yesterday and then went back home and chilled out with my wife. And this morning I came in for another couple of hours, and then I just went with my wife, my sister-in-law, my niece. We got pedicures.
nice.
Yeah,
Did you do a gel coat? You get the what's your
my fingernails have not been this clean
Wow.
in decades.
Whoa.
And my toenails are sparkly and gold.
Did they have to get out like the bench grinder to work on those things?
My
or-
wife was like, "Oh, you're gonna make them work on your claw."
Oh, gross. Gross.
That's a bonus for Instagram.
Yeah, I actually tweeted a picture of my toes.
I don't like having people handle my feet. It makes me
I
really
don't-
uncomfortable.
Grant Imahara has a thing about fish touching his feet. He can't
Fish?
stand it. Yeah.
That's a thing for a while. Like you sink your feet in the goldfish thing and they eat the dead skin off.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
true.
yes, that's
I
right.
think
Yes,
Grant
we
did
do
it
know.
on an episode
No.
about overcoming your fears, and it really upset him.
Didn't like it.
People are weird about stuff. That's fine. Everybody's weird about something.
It's totally true. This is totally true. So it has been a little bit slow. We're going to shoot a one-day build later on this
Yes,
week, but I
absolutely.
specifically scheduled it for later in the week to kind of keep on getting the shop back into some
It's
semblance
not
of
shooting
order.
shape right now.
No.
And I know the tour is coming back, and you were in the Bay Area. You did a San Jose show.
Yeah.
I unfortunately didn't get to see it.
You will.
I
will.
hopefully
Did I?
will.
I
Yeah.
don't know whether San Francisco's on the. We're still routing it. It's this weird alchemy of routing a tour. Every date has to be within like 350 miles of its
pass,
successor.
yeah, exactly.
So
Yeah.
only on the last day, on the sixth day, can the buses drive long distances.
Yeah.
Because they have to. There's all these rules about driving.
Rules of the
and
road.
Yeah.
Also,
Show.
we have to load in the show. It's a full day of loading in the show, so the crew needs time to do that. And it's amazing the alchemy of how they do it, right? Because they're also choosing cities we've played well in before, cities that have expressed demand, and we're working out deals with different theaters for their availability. It's just, I'm amazed that it works.
Do you still like when you first did this and you first went out on the tour and you were in the bus and you were driving around the country? We talked about Almost Famous a lot, as I recall. And do you still feel kind of like a rock star when you're touring around the country and like you get places and there's a big crowd and they're all excited to see you?
Oh, no, it's awesome. And I will also say Michael Stevens and I have a very similar. We're quite similar in how we enjoy dealing with people. And so we used to do meet and greets for 50 people every night, but Michael Stevens and I on this tour did 100 people every night. And it honestly felt almost shorter.
Well, I love those. Like when we did the live show, I love the getting to sit around and talk to people and have people tell us what they were building and what they were excited, what they like that we've done, what like share the things that they're interested in. Because I found out about so much cool stuff talking to those people.
Indeed, and that is one of the most satisfying parts about the tour. And people are like, you must be exhausted, and it's like, are you kidding? After playing for a sold out house, I'm so wired that I need something to do for an hour afterwards.
Well, and you it kind of recharges you. Like it's a fun, like going to PAX or going to Comic-Con or whatever and getting to talk to people is always good.
Yeah. Completely.
I know Simone and Kishore went to see your show in San Jose this past weekend.
By the way, Kishore's son, freaking adorable.
Super adorable.
Like times a million.
Awesome.
Yes.
It's ridiculous.
Smiles nonstop.
He's like a Warner Brothers cartoon of a cute kid.
Oh.
Like he's like a platonic ideal of cute.
Kishore's listening to this right now. Right in the face.
He's sitting over there with the
But I was down in the Los Angeles area in Pasadena, and the reason I couldn't make the show is because we were at Monsterpalooza, which we've been to before. It's a convention for makeup and special effects artists, and we've been to a bunch of Comic-Cons, WonderCons, pop culture conventions, and love those shows. But the shows that I love more now are these smaller, underground, more industry-based shows. DesignerCon, Monsterpalooza. It's one of these days we're going to make it over to Wonderfest, but it's not a lot of media coverage, but the artists and the creative people we meet there are just extremely talented.
Wow.
Rick Baker shows off new sculpts. Mike Hill, like the things that we've seen in the collections of Peter Jackson.
Right.
Like, this is where all that stuff gets unveiled and debuted.
That's really cool.
Well, and it's if it's like I've never been to Monsterpalooza, but when we went to the coffee convention, we went to some of these smaller things that are for specialty industries. Like it's the people who are the best in the world at the thing that they do, showing off for the other people that are the best in the world at the thing they do, and it's like that is awesome every time.
Totally agree.
Yeah, huge line. It's at the Pasadena Convention Center, and huge line around the block just to get in.
Really?
Oh yeah, it was they filled the capacity, and
God,
I don't
love
think
Pasadena.
Yeah, it's such a nice town. I mean, it's one of the like an oasis in LA.
We actually did some research to see if you could live in Pasadena and work in LA, and I know a lot of people do it, but that commute is a killer.
Oh, it would be. Like
Is
like
it the 10? Is it the 10 that's that really old freeway that goes between the two?
Oh, I don't know.
This is with the Museum of
the
Tolerance.
110.
You have to drive by the Museum of Tolerance sign to go from Pasadena to LA.
Yeah,
right?
the freeway, it's like the oldest freeway in LA, the one between LA and Pasadena, and I love it.
But every time I think I should I could probably move to LA. It's okay, and then I go down and have meetings that are like I need to be somewhere at 2:00 in the afternoon, and it's an hour to drive 4 miles, and I'm just like, no, this isn't. This isn't for me.
But
so
so very well attended.
Yeah. Super well attended. We're gonna have videos all throughout this week on the site about it. But I'm gonna call it some highlights. We met up with a sculptor named Andrew Freeman who runs Immortal Mass. Friend of ours. They make the silicone mask, and he did a incredibly surreal rendition of Ren and Stimpy.
Oh, really? I saw that.
Yeah,
it's nightmare fuel.
He did it in 1 week.
That is terrifying.
And painted everything looks like everything is silicone, but looks like mixed material, skin and acrylic, and
really upsetting. Is he selling those?
No, just personal, and they're all personal projects.
Wow.
Is it like the skin, like the Lego, like the creepy Lego minifig?
But they're his version of that. Okay. There's a sculptor named Nick Mara, and he did that. I don't know if you saw the Yul Brynner from Westworld, animatronic robot a couple years ago, where the face actually came off. And if you saw the show Westworld, the new show, HBO show, that figure, that portrait, actually made an appearance as an Easter egg.
Oh,
I don't
Like
know
in the
if
background
in the
of
background
the nod of the
exactly.
West. Oh,
nice.
awesome.
Yes.
Oh, that's awesome.
But he brought to this show a Robert Shaw, Quint from Jaws, that he'd been working on, and it is a incredible showpiece. It's him lounging in his chair with the fishing rod, crushing the beer can, one hand in pocket,
Wow.
with a bucket of chum.
Oh, man.
and piece of orca, and talking to him. Yeah, like you can be a fantastic sculptor, like Mike Hill, fantastic sculptor, but you dressing up your
Yep.
portraits, your characters, and that's tough. And there's research, just as much obsession and research as you or a prop maker going into making a hand prop as there is in making a portrait.
Right, to make sure the cloth is right and it sits
I was gonna
right.
say,
Yeah.
So do they sculpt? They put actual. They make a dummy and then they dress the dummy. They
Yeah.
don't like sculpt the cloth into
No,
the,
they dress the dumb,
Wow.
mixed materials. A lot of that's eBay, custom
Guillermo
made
owns
hats.
a bunch of that
Yeah.
stuff, and it's you feel like you're standing next to Edgar Allan Poe.
Well,
Right.
He did a show of his collection. Did you go to it or did you see
I
it
did.
online?
I went to the last day at LACMA.
I feel like we've
was
talked
there.
about this maybe. Yeah, but that I
There's
was
a couple
bummed I
pieces
missed that.
in
It
there
was
that I
amazing.
gave to him actually.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. And then just like artist alley tables of just sculptors from Sideshow, they make toys, licensed toys, but they're sculptors and they're artists, do personal work, and they have their tables. You can buy kits from
cool.
them
Wow.
to paint.
Did you buy garage kits?
I did buy a couple of garage kits.
Did you
which
get
we're
any for me? Did you pick up
we
any?
did pick up a couple extra. I'll show you later. Yes.
Is it like painting kits, like sculpts that you can paint,
Yeah.
or
So
is
they're all
or they're
castings.
like the cosmonaut that you guys built a few years ago? Is
They're
it stuff
all
like
similar.
That too?
Yeah. So
Okay.
there's some that they're digital companies. So you see a mix of companies, people who are hobbyists who make their garage kits. They're going to make a dozen of them, and that's what they're going to sell. A little more expensive, but they're only going to be a dozen.
Yeah.
And then there are some companies up now that take ZBrush sculptures and then they turn them into 3D printed
wow.
kits that you can buy and make castings of those.
Huh.
So it's really a mix. It's hard. It's when you walk through, I think a lot of people scoff like, wow, why would you pay $40 for something unpainted? One, there's a lot. This is not something that's mass produced.
No.
There's no scale
yeah.
in that. And two, you're paying for the opportunity to contribute to this art and
And frankly, painting stuff is super thrilling.
Yeah.
It's really fun.
really, really fun. Even if you're not good at sculpting, it's worth trying painting. When I painted my King Kong and my Fay Ray, that's where I learned that figure painting is done in the same way that we put on clothes, which means you paint the naked body first, and then you paint the clothes on top, and each successive article of clothing is the outermost layer is the last thing you paint. And it was I went with some YouTube tutorials in order to understand that. And then again, just as I've said, many, many times, the weathering and the final tying in of stuff is some of the most fun to do.
Well, when Frank came up and we did that week of build with
Yep.
the sculpts, I think you bought those at Monsterpalooza
exactly.
too.
Yep.
Like it is. I was skeptical when you said, "Hey, this is a thing we should do," and we did it, and it was one of the most fun things that we did.
Yes.
because it's so even when you mess up, you just kind of push on. And I mean, if there's anything that we've learned from
Much is fixable.
yeah,
Yes.
it's all fixable.
Yeah.
It seems like almost all, I guess.
Totally.
And then also watching the makeup demos. Like
Oh, cool.
different artist companies. There are, I think, at least a dozen, more than that, probably 24 makeup demos happening the whole weekend, where artists would spend 3 hours putting on appliances and doing a custom creature on an actor, and then they would walk around.
Wow.
So if you get there early, you can see the whole. You can stand there and just watch the whole process. It's being
Wow.
backstage for a movie production, and then you see a creature come to life.
Oh, that's awesome. That's I would love to go next time Tested is going to something like that.
Yes, we'll figure it out.
Do they do that twice a year? Is the thing in
There is twice a year. There's a smaller one in the fall.
like
but,
that's on Halloween weekend or something usually? Or is that something else?
Sometime in the fall. I'm not
Okay.
sure exactly. Son of Monsterpalooza. But the other thing I want to talk about, because I drove down to LA,
Yeah.
and I drove back. On the drive back, a little late to this, but I listened to the audiobook of Between the World and Me. Ta-Nehisi Coates.
Yeah, how about that? Does
and
Ta-Nehisi Coates read it?
He does.
Oh, really?
And it's about 3.5 hours.
Yeah.
And it was one of the most intense things
Dude.
I have listened to in
Yeah.
a book.
Oh man.
And it's essential reading and listening.
I just listened to. I drove back and forth to LA last week too. I just listened to a bunch of comedy podcasts. You probably spent your time better. That book is incredible. Like I
yeah. It is totally altering, and I had an unpleasant dinner on my tour with somebody who was asking me about the quote affirmative action at the Academy Awards this year, and I said, well, that I don't think that's the correct term, and this person is they have a career in which they should be using their words more carefully because they use their words carefully in their job. And I said, look, it's, what we're talking about is institutionalized racism. It's different than personal racism, and it's the thing that is also not being talked about as much. And I said, look, if you really want to understand institutionalized racism, you should read something like Between the World and Me. And he said, oh, that book yeah, I reject that. Like,
I mean,
he hadn't read it, and he just rejected it out of hand as any kind of document of utility to his worldview.
Well, one of the things I found really interesting, like the book is deep, and the format of the book is it's a letter to his 15-year-old son. Because it was that format, listening to it, I felt invasive.
Yeah.
Like, yes, he obviously wrote it as a book for people to read, but it's not for me. And I can try to grasp some of these things that he's talking about, but I will never grasp them the way he's talking about it, the way it's meant to be understood.
They won't be ingrained into your personality.
And I mean, it's really amazing that he exposed and he opened up that family talk for us to witness.
It's I'm always hesitant to talk about this book because I like the cliche of the middle-aged white guy who reads one book and is like, shit, man, I totally understand this.
Well, I feel the same way. I mean, you can say the same thing about like the movie Get Out, right? Like, like what was someone tweeted it's funny that people raving about Get Out are the people in the movie Get Out are the same people who would have raved about the movie Get Out.
Well, when I was in Chicago a few weeks ago,
it's
very true. Yeah. When I was in Chicago a few months ago, I saw a stand-up who did a really extended bit about kind of the soccer mom, the suddenly woke soccer mom, it was just absolutely just devastating and brutal. It's like, she's talking about me. I'm pretty sure she's talking about me. I'm not a soccer mom, but yeah, okay, and like, but all of that stuff helps because if it makes you understand when one of my friends says, hey, every time I get pulled over by a police officer, I was thinking, man, how often do you get pulled over? I haven't been pulled over by a cop in 10 years, 20 years. And he's like, every time I do that, I take my wallet out and I put it on the dashboard and I put my hands out the window. And I was like, well, that's fucking crazy, man. Why would you do that?
Yeah.
And then I realized that this is just I learned about that. I learned about things like the Little Green Book. There was a great episode of 99 PI about that. And like all of these cultural institutions that have come up in minority and especially black communities to deal with institutional racism and as survival mechanisms, really. And
right. Well, you realize that the Great Migration from the South to Chicago and New York and other Midwestern and northern cities in the earlier part of this century was also a dangerous journey to take because you might run out of gas because you couldn't find a gas station to fill up your car. Anyway, I didn't know there was an audiobook of Coates reading it. I'm dying to listen to that now. Yeah. Speaking of which, I am taking Mrs. Don't Try This, my wife Julia, to see Get Out tomorrow morning on its last day in the. It's Thursday's its last day in the theaters. Oh, so I'm very excited because we've got a lot to go over.
We talked about this.
Yeah.
My wife went and saw that before I did because with the kids sometimes we split up and go see movies separately, and I was just like she was exploding and she's like, you have to go see this movie tomorrow. You can't wait. You got to go. I got to talk to somebody.
I am also going to go see Hamilton tonight.
I'm so sorry.
I don't know if and let that be the last time we talk about it on the show.
Are people getting upset about it?
Well, I talk about it a lot on the other
podcast.
Fine.
Did you see it on the other?
Yes.
Had you listened to the music beforehand?
Oh
right?
yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, you got to get to know the libretto beforehand.
Yeah,
and it's really so. Anyway, that's really exciting. I'm taking my wife and I are taking my niece.
Oh, cool.
I will say it did its job. The show did its job in that I am now a recurring supporter of the musical arts. And
you know what? Yeah, there's a lot of people complaining about theaters like SHN requiring you to buy season tickets in order to get access to the Hamilton tickets. But as a friend of mine pointed out, who works in musical theater, this sort of thing lifts the boats of a generation of performers.
Yeah.
That because I bought 4 season tickets. and we will use the crap out of them. And that's nothing but a positive net good for culture and for those people traveling around the country with these shows.
It's a luxury thing. I completely understand that. You can spend your $100 here or there, a lot of different places. It's not cheap, but I think it's well worth it.
Yeah.
Well, and there are other options too. They do the lottery.
Yep.
Hit or miss with that.
Yep.
But you can get, you can get tickets. You can get single tickets. You can get pairs of tickets for, they're crazy expensive. They're a couple $100 each.
Well, I know somebody who actually had good tickets. They bought season tickets. They were planning to see Hamilton, but when they saw what the aftermarket value of their tickets were, they sold them and paid entirely for those season tickets.
Yeah.
So they'll see 5 other shows for basically free.
Yeah. There you have it.
I'm not sure I advocate that
Black
model,
market theater. Scalp those tickets. Adam Savage from Tested.com.
No. I wanted to talk about something you haven't seen, but
Okay.
I'm willing to spoil it for you.
Colossal.
No.
Oh.
I can't wait to see that one.
We got to
really
do
wanna
like
go
a
see that.
formal full episode spoiler cast about that because apparently that's
About Colossal?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm really looking
that some
forward to
homework.
it.
But before we talked about Arrival last time I was on a couple weeks ago,
Yeah.
I went and rewatched that after we talked about it because I was like, I think I might have missed something here. And holy hell, I completely missed the entire point of the film.
Oh, wow.
Like, whoosh, straight over the head. That hasn't happened to me in a really long time. It was really fun to go back and rewatch that movie. And I was like, wait.
So viewers out there and listeners out there can go back and find that podcast and watch the point where it clicks in Will's head.
I think and the thing that was fun watching it a second time is like the first time I was entirely on the surface.
Yeah.
And the second time I was paying attention to the structure of the film, and I'm not going to spoil it. I'm not going to spoil anything, but that is a film that very much rewards second viewings. I'm going to go back and watch Sicario again.
Sicario, I watched twice in one weekend, and I have
Yeah.
to tell you, I'm ready to watch it again. It's so damn good.
Yes.
I feel like that. There's no big twist or anything there.
Yeah.
That movie's just amazing.
Well, that's the movie where I realized that Benicio del Toro and Brad Pitt are like twins. And I'm not kidding.
No.
It's like it's really exact. And I mentioned that to my wife, and my wife was like, "Yeah, no, I figured that out a long time ago."
I thought Brad Pitt was in The Usual Suspects for a long time.
Oh,
I thought it was
wow.
him doing like a snatch accent.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. So
I mean-
what I
Okay.
wanted to talk about
Sorry.
was, and this is spoiler alert because I'm going right into spoilers.
Yes.
This
We're
is a
going to
spoiler.
talk about Ghost in the Shell, and we're going to talk about spoilers.
Oh, the anime classic.
The anime classic, yes, which is now a movie about white people.
Look,
I am
aren't
gonna,
they all?
And I am going to take them to task for this because Ghost in the Shell was not only it was disappointing. It was beautiful.
Yep.
Absolutely lovely. But I don't even know where to begin with my problems with it. Let's talk about whitewashing for 1 second.
Well, do you want to talk about the story? I mean, there's a whole meta story around it because obviously there was the controversy, the fan disappointment with the casting.
Yep.
But all of this was before people had seen the movie, and the story can make all the difference.
Absolutely, it
right?
can.
And
their story made it much worse for them.
Yeah,
the way they wrote that movie
and
took away any. Now, look, Scarlett Johansson is different. She's not the one writing the movie, and I think she's a wonderful actress, and I think the world of her. So I'm not blaming her for taking this role. Like, how can you blame someone for taking $10 million to go do something? That's not the problem.
You're welcome to give me $10 million.
Yeah.
You're welcome to blame me.
you
for
can
it.
put on the suit also.
I'll wear the suit.
Will
whatever
is
you
willing to
want.
whitewash any
Look.
cultural heritage you've got for $10
Look,
million.
$10 million. It's all out the window.
But for all of their complaints about we really wanted to treat this right, the degree of which the story manhandled the whitewashing of the casting was appalling.
Well, it was surprising. So I will. No, so let's
Did
get it out of the way.
Did you guys like the original?
Yeah.
Do you have
Yep.
affinity for that or like
total affinity, and I
So-
saw it whenever a million years ago.
Okay.
What actually happened in the story of this, because the fear also was that it would be too generic a RoboCop story, where she's a super cop and she finds out the company that made her has a dark secret that they stole her life. That was on all the trailers, right? It gets worse than that because the actual reveal of the story is leaning into the whitewashing.
Oh God, they
casting.
didn't write it into the story, did they?
Let me just tell you. Here's how this works. first of all, beat Takeshi, the legendary Japanese actor and director of Sonatine and bunch of other stuff. And he's a national treasure of Japan and deserves to be because he's wonderful. And he plays a heavy in this film, a good guy, but a heavy. And he speaks only Japanese throughout the whole movie.
Oh, I thought heavies were always bad guys.
Maybe I'm using the term. It could
like a big hitter, a heavy hitter.
He's a heavy hitter.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So he speaks only Japanese in the film, and no one else speaks Japanese to him. They all respond in English, and it's never discussed, which is fine.
That's fine.
Yeah.
It's
It's never discussed. It's a stylistic choice. He speaks Japanese, they speak English back, and he's
But they subtitle. Okay.
Yeah. But late in the film, the third act reveal is that Major has memories and goes and
Major is Scarlett Johansson.
Major is Scarlett Johansson, the main character, has memories and goes and finds her childhood home and figures out that this woman she sees is her mother, and the woman is Japanese.
So she's Asian in a white person's body,
Right?
That's
in a
fucked.
white robot's body. But it gets even worse than that. And this is where I was like, I just lose everything for you guys. Is that the Japanese woman playing her mother, the first time they meet, it's because the cat, of course, comes over to Major, and the cat's like, meow, meow. And the Japanese woman says, oh, he likes you, but in a terribly accented, broken English. So you have one Japanese person speaking Japanese in a setting that doesn't make sense,
Yeah.
and yet you totally buy it because, oh, cool, it's stylistic. Then you have a Japanese woman who speaks broken English with no need to, because she's in Japan. Why would she start speaking broken English to this random stranger? It doesn't make sense, and she only ever speaks broken English for the rest of the film.
And that's that's a rational like plot hole,
Right.
But that's thematically that's not even the biggest problem. The biggest problem is, and I don't disagree with their, if they were trying to say something about like whitewashing and building the story and have it be the character be Japanese and then put in this body that's not hers.
Right.
That identity crisis is never explored. Never.
No.
Oh,
And
so
it
they-
turns out that the villain and
So why write it in if you're not going to explore
I
it?
know.
Never.
And then it turns out the villain, also a white guy, played by the kid
Michael
from
Pitt.
Michael Pitt
From
yes.
Boardwalk Empire.
From Boardwalk
Okay.
Empire and Hedwig and the
Hedwig,
Angry
yep,
Inch.
yep.
Okay.
And he's wonderful. He's always a great actor. But he is also basically the Major and he are two Japanese homeless dissidents who were like captured and their brains sucked out and put into robots that were white people.
Yep.
And that's never explored in the film.
Yeah. Which there could be something there.
There could be something terrific to play with there.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. No, it's one of these, like, you have all this framework and you know that this is going to be a problem. Why not deal with it?
Or so there was a round table that I didn't read because I didn't want
Yeah, I was
spoilers
mentioning that,
with
yeah.
the Hollywood Reporter. It was Hollywood Reporter and 4 Japanese American or Japanese actresses that work in America.
Right.
And I read like the first 2 questions. Did you read the whole thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
You should talk about it then.
It was a fantastic interview of these working actresses about how they felt about the film. And many of
Right.
them didn't know too much about the production of the film and
Right.
like reviewed it from a film standpoint, but they
Awesome.
talked a lot about like what roles they typically get. But one perfect point was that they just didn't they took the culture in aesthetically, and it's all over the film,
Right.
but none of the nuances. So one of the women who reviewed the film talked about how when the mother and Scarlett Johansson at the very end of the film, and Major, they reconcile, and Scarlett Johansson says something like, "You'll never have to cry for your daughter because like
Right.
that's who I am," and they cry. Like culturally, that would never happen.
Right.
Like they would bow their heads down. They would never make eye contact. There would be no hug.
Wow.
And they would, and just none of that.
They
Just
just
disregard.
made it into an American film.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you know, the problem is that I don't know who can be privy to the meetings in which they're like, look, let's just elide this, right? I hope that films like Get Out can give studios more courage to realize that they can approach these issues in sophisticated and multi-layered ways, both direct, emotional, and meta, that satisfy on multiple layers for multiple cultures.
Can we compare and contrast this with Speed Racer for a minute?
God, which I haven't seen.
The Wachowski,
The Wachowski
Speed Racer?
Brothers Speed Racer. I watched a couple of minutes of it, and it looked unwatchable to me.
I
Oh
love
my
that
God,
film.
it's so good.
Oh, really?
Oh, it's one of my all-time favorites.
Okay.
I mean, it is.
I will go back in.
It's not a good movie.
Okay.
Like it's we're getting into Fast and Furious territory here. It is visually stunning, but they took a Japanese property and then just put white people in it.
Yeah.
But they didn't make it about Japan.
Right. Okay.
Right? Like they didn't try to drop the white people into Japanese culture. It just was like all of a sudden, instead of it being the Japanese family that races cars, it's John Goodman and the kid from anyway, it doesn't matter.
Emile Hirsch.
Emile Hirsch, yeah.
I mean, it felt like Paramount and the writers more than the studio could have went two directions with this. They could have not made that story about the identity and cultural identity, right, and ethnic identity.
Sure.
And they could have told about like what it means, and more about what the anime was about. And
it should have been about what it means to be a robot, a human in a robot body, right?
Clear, the other thing is that what they show of Japan is all like it's basically what white people think Japan is like without having gone there. Right?
Yeah.
It's like oh, it's the mysterious. Like, why not do it about Cleveland in 20
like cyberpunk Cleveland,
right?
Yeah.
In addition to this, it's also a badly made movie.
Oh.
Like there are. It made me very angry. And look, I thought about this because I know that a lot of people listen to our podcast, and if there are people who worked on the writing and production of this film, I understand how much heart, sweat, and blood, sweat, and tears goes into something like this. And I don't mean to say that your efforts are bad, because it is a beautiful movie in many ways. There's tons of stuff in it that's gorgeous, and not just the stuff that our friends at Weta made, etc. There's a lot to recommend the visual iconography of this film. However, I feel like there's this Zack Snyder-itis that is affecting filmmaking.
Man, and that's a sick burn.
And, well, here's the problem. There's a wonderful analysis of Zack Snyder's filmmaking where he mistakes a cathartic visual for a cathartic moment.
Yeah.
Right? Superman with his cape flowing without ever earning those dramatic moments. And Ghost in the Shell is rife with these. There are dozens and dozens and dozens of cityscape shots, big cityscape shots of the future cityscape where holograms of people vacuuming and enjoying snacks. It's sort of, you can tell that they were like, oh, let's take Blade Runner and bump it times a million. I can hear the wheels turning.
It's Blade Runner meets.
I know.
Yeah.
But so these cityscape shots were very, very labor intensive. I can tell they probably spent millions of dollars in totem for all of them because it's tremendous amounts of work. Mm-hmm. And almost none of the cityscapes gave me a sense of place about where I was. And like, look at the opening, like 5 shots of Blade Runner. I have a sense of where I am, and in it all just felt like fancy stuff. You're driving
it all says
through.
Something. Blade Runner says that is the world that LA has become. It's unfamiliar, but there are parts that are familiar.
And so what I felt with Ghost in the Shell was I'm looking at cityscapes in which they've decided on a set of visual markers, and they just keep on showing you, but no one's actually asking, how is this long extended shot going to push your sense of the plot forward?
Well, at the end of, when you watch the first 5 minutes of Blade Runner, it was really clear to me that was not a world that I wanted to inhabit. Right?
Yeah.
Like, no doubt, it seems neat. It seems like a neat place to go on vacation if you can time travel to the horrible future.
Right.
Do you get a sense of, this is a place I'd want to be, this is a place I wouldn't want to be?
You don't. It's neither here nor there to me.
And here's my fear for this, though, is that, like, what the lessons are to take away. The film is the film. It's out. It's gonna either make its money or not.
It's tanking.
It's tanked. But what is the studio head, or what is the person who signs the green lights the next film gonna take away? They're gonna take away, Scarlett Johansson, no Black Widow movie. They're going to take away, no more sci-fi for next 10 years. Let's not adapt these classics. Like,
hey, I'm happy if they stop adapting classics and start coming up with their own stuff. That's
a rival.
Right.
Precisely.
And
an adaptation.
But
probably
an original property and something they spent a lot of money on that had to be a nightmare pitch.
Well, and here's
Same
hoping that
Really?
Wow.
Same studio.
Well, here's the thing I get hopeful for is Denis Villeneuve is doing Blade Runner 2049, which I get more and more excited about. He's also in pre-production for the Dune film.
Yeah.
What? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now, who knows how that's going to go?
There's so many ways that could go sideways.
There's a million dead bodies on the
it a
train
remake
tracks
of the
for
Kyle
making
MacLachlan?
Dune
Is
into
it
a
based
movie.
on the book? Like,
right.
What? Yeah. Okay.
But again, you were talking about Sicario. Sicario's master shots talk about giving you a sense of place.
Oh, yeah.
Even besides Benicio del Toro doing his "Welcome to Juarez." But
I mean, you can
those
make the argument
master
that's all
you,
those
you
shots do.
are and Villeneuve is maybe like the greatest master shot maker now, filming films. And I hope that people will watch that and take that as like, oh, if I don't need to spend $20 million on my master shots, I can actually spend $4 million and get a lot more out of them just by making sure someone's asking at the top of this pyramid, how does this push our plot forward?
The first moment when Amy Adams and what's his name, Jeremy Renner drive out to the spaceship, and they're in the bunny suits, and they're all freaking out. You have a palpable sense of dread. It's literally a shot of a valley in Montana with some cars driving through it, and then an oval that they CG'd into the scene,
I know.
and it's incredibly affecting.
Yeah.
Like you don't need to spend. I bet they developed those cityscapes programmatically.
It certainly could be. It certainly could be. It's just,
I'm so bummed.
Look, here's the thing. I look at stuff like that and I think, I choose my words carefully. And I do this because I've actually gotten contacted by effects directors whose movies I've said, oh, this was not great. And they've actually said, look, I'm a fan of your work, but if you had a problem with my work, I'd love to talk about it specifically. And I was like, holy crap. Right. I take responsibility because I recognize that hundreds and hundreds of people worked really hard to make these things look great, and I totally respect that work. I'm just talking about the question at the top of the pyramid: how does this move our characters through this plot in a way that the audience will emotionally connect with? So
well, and like nobody's setting out to make a bad racist movie when they start making this film.
Right? Yes. Angus MacLean from Pixar said to me, he goes, oh, no, the axiom is your film wants to be bad.
Yeah.
Your film is trying to be bad, and your goal as a director is to stop it. You're trying to run it off its own track, and its track is, oh, I want to be terrible.
Yeah. The
machine.
It's a high-stress job.
It is, and I've said this before in the podcast. I really think that because special effects movies' budgets are so heavily disproportionate to a standard film's budget. So much more goes into the visuals that I think a lot more people pay attention to the wrong parts of the film. And you end up with movies like the Total Recall reboot.
Oh my God, I was just thinking about
that. Which was
Wow.
visually ludicrously sophisticated. And in fact, some of the best inventation of the Blade Runner universe I have yet seen on film.
Is that the one with the tunnel that went through the planet for commuters?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
It was.
So stupid.
Yes. And yet, to no service. I know. Total
But
Recall.
and both that and Ghost in the Shell pull from the visual language of movies, which is not a bad thing.
No, not at all. I don't begrudge that, and I totally understand it. And honestly, if I ever direct a science fiction movie, I know my mood book's going to be packed with Blade Runner references.
Yeah, it's going to be Blade Runner and Alien, and look, that's pretty much it. Maybe a little bit of Empire Strikes Back.
I think pretty much this audience could tell exactly what my science fiction movie is going to look like.
I look at this stuff, and you think about the unbelievable amount of money that's spent making this film, and then you hear stories about people who can't make successful directors who can't get an $8 or $10 or $12 million film made because there's literally no angle in that right now. Right?
Yeah.
There's no way to make money on that.
Well, also when we talk about
a huge bummer.
Adaptations, even reboots, the thinking is that the movie will find success. The machine will find success because of the recognizability, the fandom, and without an understanding of what that is. Yeah.
If you're Marvel, you can get away with that now, I think. But I don't think anybody else has that kind of lift.
Well, but Marvel's earned that. Marvel has earned
and it's not
time and time again by hiring good directors. And, I know Joss Whedon has talked extensively about how hard he fought to keep the Hawkeye farmhouse scene in Civil War. And he's 100% right. That movie is so importantly better.
Or in Avengers 2.
Avengers 2, excuse me.
Yeah.
The movie is so much importantly better because of that, because of that scene. And, I know he's talking about having had to fight against the machine to get that in, but it's to Marvel's credit that he won. And it's to Whedon's credit, of course. But Marvel has earned our trust for that kind of thing.
They've made like 20 movies, and all of them are great except for maybe 3, and they're still okay.
I don't think I can watch the original Thor though.
I
can't watch
love
that.
the original Thor.
Kenneth Branagh's Thor. That's great.
Oh my God, it's so
That's too cheesy.
Have you seen the trailer for the new Thor?
I haven't watched it yet. I'm very excited
Oh
about
my
it.
I'm not watching any more
Goodness,
trailers.
it's
I'm not
so
watching trailers for that.
It's so good.
I mean, look, they made the movie about the tree and the raccoon good.
Yes.
Look,
That's true.
Yeah.
like if they can do that, everything
Well,
they deserve benefit of the doubt.
And
They've
speaking of
earned
a
it.
studio concluding that Scarlett Johansson can't anchor a movie, I loved Whedon's quote. And again, I quoted this before, but he said, well, hopefully now that the studios realize that a raccoon can anchor a film, maybe they'll let a woman try it.
Oh my God. Yeah.
I mean, that raccoon has personality. I apologize. I'm so sorry. That's
So,
we're
on
not-
that- yeah. This has been three white guys discussing the problems of the world. Oh, excuse me.
Wow. I'm just gonna.
I'm whitewashing Norm in the podcast.
Wow.
I'm actively
Holy
whitewashing
hell.
him.
Who am I?
What does this even mean? I'm so uncomfortable. We'll see you guys next week.
Love you guys. See you next week.